the ceasefire or the pause in Yemen, what did really go wrong that it seems doesn't look like anybody has abided by the agreement, especially Hadi himself, who Mr. Ismail will Sheikh Ahmed announced that he had consulted with him, and the Saudi-led coalition say we are not concerned about this totally.
Well, obviously, the Secretary General is very, very much disappointed that the humanitarian pause did not take hold over the weekend in Yemen. We are continuing with contacts at various levels. Despite the continued airstrikes, despite the fighting, our humanitarian colleagues and their partners were able to distribute some vital aid to the desperate people of Yemen wherever they can and however they can. Obviously, the security situation makes it that much more difficult for humanitarian aid, for critical humanitarian aid to be delivered. We continue to reiterate our call for humanitarian pause, unconditional humanitarian pause. And I would say that the Secretary General reminds all parties in the conflict in Yemen from both inside and outside the country of their obligations under international human rights and humanitarian law, and calls on all sides to prevent further deterioration of the unfolding humanitarian catastrophe that we're seeing in Yemen.
Could you please elaborate on the delivery of aid? Did you get any fuel into Yemen yet?
I just, one of the reasons I was late, I was trying to harvest as much information as I could for you. Our colleagues at OCHA are still trying to get numbers from the ground. I think you'll understand that the situation is rather complex. We hope to be able to share with you some things by the end of the day. The reporting needs to come up the line back up to here. I wasn't able to get the numbers I wanted to get you for today, but we hope to have some.
On the border, did you have any updates?
Not yet, no.
In your statement, when you spoke about the truce, the word monitors were mentioned. I think there was said there will be some kind of monitoring.
In the statement,
When
no, I think if you go back to the statement, there was no mention of monitors for the humanitarian pause. There was a reflection on what would have to come, what agreements would have to be reached in order to elaborate a real and a sustainable ceasefire, which would involve obviously withdrawal of some territory and some monitoring. But the monitors were not part of the humanitarian pause.
don't think in that case that the UN was a little bit rushing into announcing a truce without all the details needed, including monitors, because that was
Listen, I think,
criticized for the previous truce.
I don't think we can be criticized for rushing into an agreement after we've seen weeks and weeks and weeks of the Yemeni people suffering, of what is, by all accounts, close to being a humanitarian catastrophe. The special envoy had received the commitments that he felt were necessary for us to come out with the statement. It is incumbent on all the parties involved to abide by those commitments.
Right after the supposed deadline is saying they weren't formally asked even. And I remember in this back and forth last week, you'd said that President Hadi had said that he'd conveyed something to them. And does the Secretariat or DPA or anyone feel that communication, you're basically conflating a call for a pause with what was announced as a UN brokered pause, which people believed in and never took place?
No, listen, obviously the fact that the pause never took place is of disappointment to us. The Secretary General Special Envoy over the past weeks has been in Sana'a and in Riyadh talking to the parties to secure their commitment to the pause. He discussed the pause with senior Saudi officials, Mr. Ismail did, and after receiving commitments from the Yemeni parties, President Hadi advised us that he had informed the government of Saudi Arabia of his support for the pause. So, obviously different people are saying different things. We very much stand by the commitments we had received for this pause. And as we speak, as I said, contacts are continuing. As soon as I can brief you a bit more detail on those, I will. But I think at the end of the day, the fact that there was no pause is just continuing to heap a greater suffering on the Yemeni people.
But he seems to say, he's been quoted, Ismail Sheikh Ahmed has been quoted that the ceasefire has not collapsed. Is that accurate? I mean, was there a ceasefire and has it not collapsed?
Well, obviously, the humanitarian pause did not take hold to the extent that we would have liked.
All right. And could I also ask you